When am I collaborating with Shoe on Head? And when am I interviewing Tucker or Candace Owens? I'm going to break down these questions and other feedback and comments from channel members, starting with a really interesting one, which is I've discussed the sort of left-leaning and populist internet cultural commentator and YouTuber Shoe on Head, and I've had some pretty positive things to say about a lot of her work. And somebody asked, I think you need to collab with Shoe on Head. Will we ever get that crossover? And I'd say maybe I'll send out an interview request for Shoe on Head, but I don't see her do a lot of collabs or interviews or anything. She's kind of in her own little world, and I'd be absolutely down to do it, very interested to do it, but don't hold your breath waiting for it to happen, because especially big creators like that are very busy. They don't do a ton of things, and they often, especially with someone like me who, I've got a decent sized audience and platform and I'm doing well enough for myself, but I'm not, bringing hundreds of thousands or millions of views where they would have a huge value add of doing something for me or with me, even though sometimes my clips, at least on Twitter for my interviews, get, a lot of views. Just ask Taylor Lorenz from our recent chat. But no, I would love to talk to Shoe on Head. I think we could have an interesting conversation, mix it up on some things. But don't hold your breath on waiting it to happen, because it probably won't, but I will give it a shot. So somebody said, I'm so glad you're back to your podcasting again. I know on Normal Gaze you'd spoken about numbers falling off, but I never did. I was worried you were not going to do daily shows again. I'm glad you're back to it. Love you, Brad. I'm a huge fan. Been watching since around 23. Wow, you've been with me for a while then. And kudos to you, because my content back then was not very good. I've been debating going back on a lot of my old videos and privating them. Not because I said anything so offensive or insane, or I don't want to get canceled, or my takes have changed. My opinions really haven't changed, but it's more so because I cringe at the presentation of myself, my look, my setup, my takes, the way I spoke. But it's like anything. It's like creating content, making videos, yapping about politics, being a professional yapper, all this stuff that I do. It's like any skill or any talent that you do, you just do more of it and you get better as you go along. And so, yeah, I had to post some cringe content at first, or some poorly done content, or I had to just get the reps and just post through it. And maybe I'll go back and private some of it, but I wouldn't want to erase all that history. And it's part of my lore now. It's part of how I got here. So even if going back and watching some of my old videos does make me cringe, kudos to you for being here since 23. And I'm still figuring out what exact form I want to do my daily content in, but trust me, as much as the Normal Gaze channel has been awesome, I host that with Clarkson Lawson. We do videos almost every single day. We have tons of channel members over there, special members only content. We react to insane LGBT stuff and controversies from social media. It's just totally comedic, totally unserious. As much as I enjoy that, I do, of course, want to do my own political thing. I'm just kind of thinking through what that means and what that looks like. But thanks to you who do tune in, there obviously has been a pretty significant decrease in views across YouTube, but especially political YouTube. And for folks like myself who don't just pander to Team Red or Team Blue, it can be tough. So it is the channel members who make it all possible. Another person says, Brad, I know you're originally from Massachusetts, so this might hit close to home for you, as it did for me, a fellow Massachusetts dude. Did you see the Caleb Hammer episode a couple of weeks ago with that nuisance streamer from Manchester, New Hampshire? That one was wild, and that dude might be the biggest dirtbag I've seen on Financial Audit. Yes, yes, I did see him, and he was a dirtbag, and Caleb caught him cheating, which I hate. And also, these people are so stupid. What do they think is going to happen when they go on Financial Audit? He's going to ask to see your phone. And if you've been Snapchatting random women, he's going to see that. So yes. And I honestly think nuisance streamers, if y'all don't know what that is, a nuisance streamer is these people that live stream themselves going out in public and pranking people or causing problems or inconveniencing others or making a scene. And that's the bit. That's the content. They have no actual skills or talent or information or any insight to offer. So they just harm others for content. I think it's the lowest of the low among, maybe there's one or two few things that are worse, but I genuinely have more respect for an OnlyFans than I do for a nuisance streamer, because at least they're not bothering anyone else that's not choosing to sign up for them. They're not causing a scene in public and inconveniencing people trying to go about their day. So, yeah, no, I did see that episode. I thought that guy was awful, and I generally have a very low opinion of these nuisance streamers. Somebody else commented, please invite Tucker Carlson and Candyland, which is my nickname for Candace Owens, on the show. Listen, I probably wouldn't even bother to invite them because I don't think they would ever do it. There's not a lot to be gained from doing it. And I think I could actually have a productive and challenging interview with Tucker. I think it would be very tough to really get anywhere with Candace because we're just operating in such different realities. We'd just be totally talking past each other. We just don't have any sort of shared assumptions, shared set of facts, anything like that. It's just totally different. So it can be very, very difficult to have a conversation that's productive or to even get to the root of actual disagreements when you don't even have a shared understanding of like basic reality and what is and is not happening. So I would find it very difficult, honestly, to do an interview with Candace Owens. I would have to extensively prep for it. And then even then, I think it would be tough. Tucker would be an interesting one, but he is hard to pin down. He's very charismatic. He's very kind of wriggly. And so I wouldn't be surprised. This is the same way I feel about actually, interestingly enough, interviewing JD Vance is something I've always wanted to do. And I know that there's a lot I could hold him accountable for and call him out on that I think he really has done wrong. But he's also so talented and so skilled just in rhetoric and deflection. And he's a very, whether you agree with him or not, he's like very capable operator. And so I would honestly worry that they would outmaneuver me in an adversarial conversation. And I probably need a lot more reps and a bigger platform before that. But maybe at some stage in my career, that could happen. And it would be pretty cool. I do agree. So let's see what we got next here. Someone said, actually, I had no idea that the Democratic Socialists of America stood by these ideas. Wow, thanks for explaining that, Brad. No, of course. And I don't actually blame you because a lot of these times they will gaslight us and say, Democratic Socialists just want health care for people. What's so radical about that? And it's like, you go and look at the actual website or observe the actual conference and you see people calling for the abolishing prisons, abolishing police. What else? There's so much. Abolishing the Supreme Court. Genuinely, literal open borders. Like open borders is usually said as a caricature or an epithet of like what liberals believe and what their actual policies are like very permissive or lax, but it's not literally open borders. You go to the DSA and their agenda and it is open borders in their own words, right? And so that's what I'm trying to do is at the end of the day, I can't stop y'all from supporting crazy shit. Like if it's a free country, it's a sort of like democratic system. So if y'all want to vote for the radicals who want to, again, in their words, eradicate Western civilization, I can't stop you, but I feel like you should know that that's what you're doing. And that's all I can do is like offer you the facts of what these people actually believe and have said and not let you fall for their polished PR spin. Like Zoran Mamdani, we talked about on the channel a lot recently. He's a very good example of this, where if you just watched him in interviews, he gives this veneer of moderation or sensibility that is absolutely not substantiated or in keeping with his entire career and policy positions and worldview, but is effectively crafted by his charisma and polish and his political skill. And so I see part of what I'm doing, and not just, this is an example recently with this rise to the left, but I'll absolutely do this for the right as well, is just making sure y'all know what's really going on. Not what the spin is, not what the partisan slop media tells you, because if you turn on Fox News and you just watch them cover whatever it is they're covering, you will not get an honest idea about what's happening. And if you turn on MS Now, you sure won't. It's like, that's why I do believe in this kind of independent media, even though unfortunately a lot of people in this space have turned into just the digital version of that partisan media, which is actually worse in a lot of ways. Anyway, more here. I don't understand how they think defund the police is ever going to work. Anyone with a brain cell can imagine the chaos and criminal takeover without any police. Are they so idealistic that they think mutual aid will make people nice and kind to each other? You know, it's an interesting comment because I think the answer is actually yes. I think the radical DSA types who want to like abolish policing or what have you genuinely have a totally incorrect view of human nature, where they think that if everyone had their material needs met and they believe wrongly that their policies would like eradicate poverty. And so nobody would be, and they wouldn't actually, but that's what they believe. And so they think that well, if we just made sure everyone had healthcare and everyone had food and everyone had their needs met, nobody would do crime. There'd be so little crime, we could just solve it through community organizing or restorative justice. And it's like, that's just not how human nature works, actually. It's just not. A lot of crime is not as simple as it's just poverty, especially when you look at the horrific things people do to each other that don't even involve stealing food or stealing, what you need to survive or anything like that. So I think they have ironically, to use a word, impoverished intellectually view of human nature and of society, that it leads to this utopian thinking where they really do believe that, oh, well, if everyone had their needs met, we wouldn't need the police and we could all just get along in kumbaya. And that's actually insane and leads to mass human suffering if you try it, as it has throughout the past. So that's what I think about that. The same person writes, Hassan Piker terrifies me, the way he casually talks about bombs and terror. Oh yeah, and I don't find him attractive at all. Well, that's fair. I do think he's kind of he's not my type. I'm not out here swooning for Hassan. I do think he's a objectively decent looking person. What I will say about this is he absolutely, unequivocally would not be nearly as popular as he is, or get an ounce of the sympathetic, water-carrying media coverage that he gets if he wasn't someone that these thirsty gay men journalists want, if you know what I mean by that, and that these woke white ladies who are also journalists, who are straight, also thirst for. So he appeals to both these like prototypical media archetypes of what they find attractive. And, it's funny. There's like one woke concept I think is somewhat true. And it's the concept of pretty privilege, that just like attractive people get treated much better and have lots of unearned benefits and preferences. I've been suffering from it my whole life. No, I'm not. I'm actually kidding. I really have not. I was not very good looking as a child or a teenager. And I think I, ended up fine enough looking as an adult, and that certainly has helped me, but not to the same extent that I haven't relied on it in the way someone like a Hassan Piker has. And I 100% think that if he had said and done all the same things he had done, but he was fugly, that he would like be totally cast out, persona non grata, and that ironically for like a party that's so concerned about unearned privilege, they have just totally cashed in unambiguously on giving full pretty privilege to this dude, which I find to be incredibly concerning and insane, but also not particularly surprising, knowing these gays and the gay journalists and staffers that are behind these organizations and how thirsty they are, and knowing these women and how thirsty they are who work for all these magazines and everything. And I'm sure there's some straight men that have gone along with it, but I do think the Hassan symptom is driven by those groups I mentioned. Another person comments, I'm not really big into sports, but I was raised in the belief that sports events are supposed to connect without political and or religious views being expressed. Recently, even sports seems to be used for polarization purposes. I do agree with this. I mean, it's a little more complicated because there is some truth to the idea that it's impossible to be totally apolitical or totally separate something like sports from politics, because politics does touch lots of walks of life. And but I think we should strive for that. We should strive to avoid divisive things. And really, like if I ran a business or if I ran a sports team or anything like that, I would abolish all the virtue signaling. There would be no pride night, but there would also be no faith night. There would be no politicians invited to throw out the first pitch from either party. Like I would really strive. It's impossible to achieve perfect neutrality. I agree. I acknowledge that, but I would at least strive for it, because sports is supposed to be unifying and it's supposed to be distraction and it's supposed to be escapism. And the more you inject the outside world and its conflicts and its tumults into it, the more you're compromising the thing that makes sport really great in the first place. At least that's my perspective on it. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. You guys have to let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. If you want me to read your comment or respond to your feedback, just become a channel member, hit the join button or the link in the description or pinned comment, and drop your comments or questions down below. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Thanks to the channel members for supporting my work. We'll be back with more real soon.